The AllStar app, the #1 app in the business. UFC, Bellator, One Championship, PFL, and more. Get the app right now. Link in description.
There's this power slap league that's starting off. That's kicking off with Dana White, and I'm thinking like he might consider bringing UFC fighters over, on like one-off contracts. Like, do you see something like that?
Man, I mean, if the money's right, anytime I tell people I would do stuff for money, sometimes they're surprised, and I'm like, listen, man, we fight in a cage for money, like half naked in front of everyone. So, I mean, if the money's right, I would never say no. I wish it was more of like a slap boxing where I could get out of the way. We could dip and dodge and then throw some slaps. But the idea that you can't get out of the way of it, it's kind of tough. Even though I do take a lot of punches in my fights, I'm usually one of those guys who will take a punch to give a punch. So I'm gonna watch it. I'll watch it. I know it'd be a lot easier getting us since we already have contracts with the UFC. But I like where I'm at in the UFC right now.
For sure. And man, you made a good point right there, man. They should make a slap boxing league because every kid grows up slap boxing, right? I'm pretty sure you did as well.
I definitely did, man. We used to in like high school, middle school and high school, when we used to have a swim class, we would slap box each other, and then before swim class, because we were in like the different locker room, and then we would also get like our towels. So we would obviously we'd bring our towels to swim class. We would wrap our hands in towels and we would box with those too. So those are my first few fights I used to get into. We used to slap box and towel box.
I used to wrap like those thick gym socks around my knuckles in middle school.
Oh yeah,
like because I play football, so off season all the football players would get together anyways, right? And we'd be at someone's house and we're idiots, so we're like, let's figure out something to do to hurt each other, and then we'd wrap our heads in socks and then box in the backyard and then go into the bathroom and look at our faces, how fucked up we looked afterwards.
Yeah, that's the way to do it, man. I mean, those are some good childhood memories of
Exactly.
of slap boxing and locker room boxing.
For sure. Maybe you and Steamroller could start a league, the slap boxing league on YouTube or something. It's an idea.
I mean, hey, I'm open to it. I don't know if what my manager is gonna think of that if I start posting slap boxing videos. But I mean, hey, you'd rather do something first and then ask permission later.
Now, you're 282, man. Las Vegas, T-Mobile Arena. You have a fire matchup here, Alex Hernandez. What type of fighter do you see in him?
Oh man, I think he's super durable. I think he is a very explosive fighter. I think he's one of those guys, like when they offered me the fight, I knew he was going to accept it, and of course I accepted it too. I'm one of those guys too. And if you look at his resume, he's fought nothing but tough guys. I don't think he's ever turned down a fight. I doubt it. We have the same management company, so I knew he was going to take it right away. He's fought a ton of killers at 155. It's going to be interesting to see how he looks at 145. You got to expect there's going to be something going on with, he's got to lose 10 extra pounds that he hasn't lost, in a very long time. I don't know if he's done a test cut, or I don't really know what he's been doing like that. So that's going to be kind of the X factor going into this fight. But I got a lot of respect for him, and I'm taking this fight extremely seriously. I'm coming off a loss. Even though it was a great fight to Burgos, I'm coming off a loss, and I got to make that right. I need to get back in the win column, and this is a matchup I'm taking very seriously, and I'm super excited for. I think the fans are going to absolutely love it.
When you got a guy that's dropping down a weight class rather than going up a weight class, what do you think is behind that situation? Like, let's say you would drop down to bantamweight. What would be behind that decision?
Well, that's never gonna happen. I'm one of those guys that I would have to go up, and there's not too many cases of guys going down and having a lot of success. Usually it's the guys who are going up. I mean, there's obviously the exception to the rule, like Frankie Edgar shouldn't even have been fighting at 155. I think he was fighting there before 135 and 145 existed. But for the most part, guys go down because they're having a tough time in their weight class, and that seems like to be the case. He just got choked out by Moicano, who's an absolute stud. He's lost some big fights against Drew Dilber, Cowboy Cerrone, fights like that. I think he was kind of on the smaller side at 55, and he was getting outgunned a little bit at 55, so I think he thinks this is going to be more of his natural weight class. And it's one of those things, I think it sounded good a couple months ago when he agreed to the fight, but as it gets closer and closer and he's doing that weight cut, and then he fights a guy like me who's a very high volume fighter, I very rarely get tired in fights like this. I think it is going to be kind of a mistake matching up with me at 145.
Yeah, he is a gun, and you're also a gun. And, you know, when you're going down in weight, gun versus gun, you always want to go with the guy that's been at that weight for a long time, right?
Yeah, I would think so. Obviously, I'm not taking him lightly at all, but for him to come down to my weight class and to have to get in that marathon of that, it's really more of like a 15-minute sprint. There's got to be some give there. But again, I'm preparing for the best. Alex Hernandez. I'm training like a madman. I'm about to head to a training session after this. It's 7 p.m. here in the East Coast, and I'm not leaving anything to chance. I'm going there the best fighter that I've been. I'm the most experienced. I've had this whole year to get ready for this fight, and this is just going to be an amazing fight at 282.
For sure. I was talking with Julian Erosa, and his last two opponents missed weight, and he got percentages of their purse, and he says it doesn't bother him anymore. It's like you want to miss weight, let me get your money, and then I'll beat your ass. Like, that's his attitude for it. Does it bother you that fighters miss weight?
Well, I've been lucky. I haven't had an opponent miss weight. I don't think ever in my career. I've never had an opponent miss weight. I've never missed weight. So watching it, and Julian's my boy. Shout out to Julian Erosa. I've been boys with him since The Ultimate Fighter. We were roommates, and he's one of those guys that I'm never gonna fight him at featherweight just because I have so few friends in this crazy sport, and he's one of them. So, but yeah, I was actually a little worried about him fighting Mean Hakeem because you know how big Hakeem is at featherweight, and he accepted it right away. He's a badass dude, and if you watch that fight, it seemed like Hakeem was a little bit off. I think he was a little bit sluggish. He probably had a really bad weight cut. I don't think he was trying to cheat in any way. I think he just had a really bad weight cut, and Julian took advantage of it, and he looked like the best Julian Erosa that we've seen so far. So I'll cross that bridge if it happens. If he misses weight, we'll see. We'll negotiate it. Luckily, we have the same manager, so he knows I want to get my money. If I'm fighting a lightweight and he can't make weight, it's a little bit unfair, but at the same time, I haven't fought all year, so I'm most likely going to fight and take that little bit of extra money, throw it into my child's, my baby's college fund and move on from there.
Do you feel like there are fighters in the UFC that miss weight on purpose to gain an advantage?
No, I don't know. It's tough, man. There could be, but I feel like if you're familiar with how we cut weight, it's a lot of we're waiting till the last minute to completely dehydrate ourselves. And I think a lot of times people just go into it a little bit too heavy than they should. They go into it maybe, compromised, maybe sick, maybe injured. And I just think it's usually just a timing issue, or they bit off more than they can chew. They try to cut a little bit too much weight, but I don't think any fighter like last minute's like, oh, I'm going to keep these 2 extra pounds on or 1 extra pound on, because they do have to give up some of their money, and we're not making a ton of money as it is, especially if you're only fighting a couple times a year. So I don't know. There could be guys who do it, but I think more so it's just they just try to cut a little too much, which kind of is a kind of cheating, but I just think it's kind of just a mess up in the last minute there.
You were supposed to compete last July, man, and you had to pull out of your first fight of your career, which is insane to me because you've been fighting for so long. You had some minor tears and a bone bruise in your knee. You couldn't walk for a few weeks, man. Just describe that type of pain, because most people, they walk their whole life and don't ever think about not being able to walk.
Yeah, that was the super frustrating part, and the only other time I've had injuries like that, I've torn my ACL or I broke my hand, or it was something that I knew I had to get surgery. So it was like, all right, your hand's broken. You got to get surgery on this. You're going to be out for a while. Or, your knee's completely blown out. You have to get surgery on this. You're going to be out for a year and you got to rehab it. And this was one of those things that I got an MRI on my knee first, and there was a couple minor tears. And I thought I was going to be okay, so I kind of worked it out. And that's why I couldn't fight early in the year, because I had that issue. And then when I was in New York training with the Serra-Longo guys, Frivola and, Aljamain and all those guys, I got a hard kick to that same knee. The knee blew up. The leg was really bad. And I was like, oh, man, here we go. I'm going to have to get an MRI, and there's probably something torn or whatever. And I got the MRI back. I couldn't walk on it. I actually got wheelchaired through the hospital. I got wheelchaired through the airport because I got it injured the day before I left. So it was super embarrassing. I'm getting pushed around with all these old, crippled people, and I'm a healthy guy. So it was super embarrassing, but I ended up getting the MRI, and yeah, it was a bad bone bruise. It was a couple minor tears, but I didn't need surgery. So at that point, even though I couldn't walk, I still thought I was going to be able to fight. I was just over a month out from my fight. People are messaging me, can't wait for your fight. It's going to be amazing. I'm betting money on you. I'm buying tickets to your fight now. And meanwhile, I can't even walk. And I'm like, oh my God. So I tried to tough it out. I was doing ice baths every day. I was getting massages. I was doing all kinds of treatments to it. And it just got to a point I just couldn't walk on it. So it was a really tough decision, but I called the fight off about 3 weeks before the fight. Luckily, they got Bill a good matchup, and he won the fight, so I'm super happy for him. There's no bad blood there. And I actually couldn't even, by the time the fight happened, I still could barely walk. I was still limping around all over the place. So it was the right decision, and it was one of those things that I realized that that's a thing that even though I didn't need surgery, I couldn't even walk on it. So there was no point limping into that fight and getting leg kicked and taking a loss for no reason. And actually watching that fight, that was the card that Yair Rodriguez hurt Brian Ortega, and he looked like he had an injury. And in my fight, Herbert Burns got hurt, and it seemed like he was coming off a knee surgery, and he re-tore his knee. So it was one of those things. I know I made the right decision, even though it's been a really tough year not fighting at all. It was the right decision that had to be made, and luckily I didn't need any surgery.
The last time you missed the whole year of competition was 2018. If you compare these years, was that year tougher than this one?
Yeah, that was tougher because that was when, that was right before I was trying to get in the UFC. I had a huge knockout win over Eric Reynolds. So I thought, I was like, all right, this is going to be my year. I'm going to get to the UFC. And then in wrestling practice, that's when I tore my ACL. And that's when they're like, you're going to be out for a year, So that was harder because I wasn't established yet. And I was 29 years old. I still wasn't in the UFC yet. My wife's looking at me like, is this thing going to happen or not? And I knew, I remember when I was growing up, you would watch football players, they'd tear their ACL and they were never the same again. So luckily, technology's gotten a lot better. I had a really incredible surgeon, and it was one of those things. At the time, it seemed like it was the worst thing that happened to me, but looking back, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me because I came back, I did a 6-month boxing training camp, I won a pro boxing match, my hands got much better, and then after that, the rest is history. I won another fight, I got to the Contender Series, won that fight, won my first 3 UFC fights, and kind of just went on a run after that.
Man, and being out for that amount of time, you get to kind of sit back and reassess and look at what you're doing. Did you alter anything throughout that year?
Yeah, there was it was one of those things. I still think I'm getting better. I know I'm getting older. I'm 33 years old. I'm actually going to be 34 the day I'm cutting weight. So I'm going to be cutting weight on my birthday, which is just going to be wild, but it is what it is. But I started in the sport really late. I didn't really start training until I was 21. So I've only been doing this for 13 years, 12, 13 years. So I'm still learning and growing every single year. And I feel like this training camp, I've gotten a lot better physically because I've been training. Even though I got hurt, I was still doing a lot of workouts, still doing a lot of training. I'm a lot more focused on this fight because when you're fighting 3 or 4 times a year, it's just you're taking a fight. And this time I had a lot of time to really focus on what I needed to get better at, what my weaknesses were. the best way I could cut weight. I've done a lot more recovery sessions and a lot more new recovery, a lot more, cold tubs, ice baths, stretching. And since I've had the year off, I'm just super excited to go out there and fight again. And it's going to be the best version of myself that's ever fought before.
The judging, man, has been very inconsistent. And, we've seen a lot of controversial decisions, especially in Las Vegas. Do you discuss that with your team and your coaches?
No, I think it's one of those things that it's always kind of been the case. And our biggest thing that we always talk about with my coaches and everything is, and I know it's super cliche, but we try not to leave it in the hands of the judges. Go out there and do everything you do to finish a fight. And I know that's people are like, you're not always going to be able to finish a fight, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, that's my goal. That's always been my goal, is to be an exciting fighter. My goal is to go out there and either knock you out or submit you. I've gotten pretty good at both of them. I have a good mix of knockouts and submissions. This is a fight that could go either way. I could either get a knockout or get a submission. And that's how I look at it. I look at it like you have 15 minutes to finish this guy. So go out there, do everything you can do to knock him out, do everything you can do to take him out. And try not to leave it in the hands of the judges. And if you do that, if you're going out there and try to win every minute and try to finish him, then it is what it is. If it goes your way, great. If it doesn't, of course, there's things that we work on. We try to win rounds at the end of it. We try to do certain things that help us win rounds. But at the end of the day, they're going to be bad. They're going to be bad or good in your fight or not, whether you do something good or not. So it's kind of out of your hands. But I would like to see more of improvements in the judging.
UFC 282. After the fight is over, what do you want Dana White, Sean Shelby, Mick Mayer to be saying about you?
Oh, I want them to first say, oh, man, we can't have this kid on the prelims ever again. Put him back on the main card. Keep him with fans. Let's get this guy a ranked opponent. Let's get this guy, a big fat bonus check. There was a couple guys calling me out, which I might, call them back out, remind them that I'm not going nowhere. There's some guys in the top 15 that I might be calling out that they might make those matchups for. But just what I always look for in a fight. I want them kind of like the Burgos fight. Man, this fight's exciting. I want the reporters to ask about me, which they almost do almost every fight, which I've noticed which is really cool. Shout out to the UFC reporters that they always bring up, oh man, what about that Billy Q fight? What about this? What about that? And I want the bosses to remember that, oh man, Billy Q put on a show. Let's extend his contract. Let's get him more money. Let's give him the fights that he wants in front of fans because he's a fan favorite. That kind of stuff.
Without a doubt, you're a fan favorite. UFC, man, they banned gambling for fighters and coaches. Do you ever look at the odds of your fights?
I've seen them before. I've taken a look at it. There's someone on Twitter who always tags me in them. But Adrian Yanez cracked me up. I saw one of his tweets. He was like, the UFC saw me losing all these parlays and they banned me from gambling, which I thought that was hilarious because before the ban, I would help out my family, and sometimes I'd put in bets. I would bet on some of my teammates and stuff, and always I would never bet against someone that I'm close with. But I feel like sometimes, I see fighters picks. Sometimes they go 500 or less anyway. So I feel like sometimes our inside knowledge isn't as good as what would think. And I think we should be able to bet on fights, for guys to win. Like I should be able to bet on myself to win the fight. Why not? Because you got to have that confidence in yourself if you want to do that. But I could see how, I grew up watching or hearing about all the Pete Rose stuff and guys who've gotten in trouble for betting. So I get it. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out with all this, but it is what it is, man. It's if we're not allowed to bet, there's other ways to make money. We're still allowed to make our picks, and I still get paid by certain companies to give people who I think's going to win. So that's cool, but if I don't make money off betting, it's all good.
We kind of have a Pete Rose situation right now with the investigation of James Krause. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I was watching that fight, and I remember my boy Ben Davis, the Bane. because I wasn't watching the line, like I don't watch it super close like that, and he tweeted right before the fight that there was like a crazy line move, and he's like, I'm expecting Derek Minor to come out like with I forgot what he said, like a super bad injury, and sure enough he did, and I was like, Bane, I was like, what happened here, man? And then sure enough, people started tweeting like, what's going on with this? What's going on with this? I will say this. I've always been super cool with James Krause. Every time I see him, we have great conversations. I think he's one of the smartest minds in MMA. He's been nothing but supportive to me. He's invited me to his gym several times, and he had no reason to. Like, he wasn't getting anything out of it besides just being a super cool guy. So I don't know. I can't imagine him betting against his own guy, especially when he was cornering him. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out, because that's going to kind of set a precedent for how things are handled. But I'm rooting for him. I hope that it was just kind of a miscommunication and that nothing happened to him, because he's heavily involved with the sport, and I think he is good for the sport. I think he's got a bunch of really good fighters. I'm surprised I haven't got matched up with any of his guys yet. He's got a bunch of good 45ers. But yeah, I'm rooting for him, man. I don't think he was doing anything malicious. I think it probably leaked that Derek was hurt, and I don't think that is illegal necessarily. But yeah, I'm on James Krause's side. I hope he doesn't get in trouble for that.
Yeah, me either, man. I hope nothing's wrong. You know what I mean? I hope the investigation comes out and he's all good, because, like you said, he's a great coach. And he has a lot of great fighters. And him being banned from cornering his fighters is really shitty for the fighters.
Yeah.
December 10th, UFC 282, Las Vegas. Go in the descriptions and download the AllStar app. Billy Q, appreciate the time, man, and all the best in this fight. It's a fire matchup.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate you having me, brother. Take care. I'll see you soon, brother.